All right, let's just jump right into this explainer. We're unpacking a really fascinating, multi layered economic domino effect today, using some hard data to guide us through an incredible journey of cause and effect in the global economy. So here's the big question we're tackling. Does raising the minimum wage actually stimulate spending, encourage people to have more kids, and somehow cost almost nothing to overall production because of robots? Basically, should governments just raise the minimum wage to match the cost of living? Let's find out. To figure this out, we've got a blueprint. We'll look at the minimum wage chain reaction, how more money means more spending, this idea of an economic baby bump, the rise of the machines, and finally, the cost of living verdict. All right, part one, the minimum wage chain reaction. Let's tip that first domino. Think about it. When a low-income worker gets a raise, they don't exactly stash it away in some offshore bank account, right? They spend it. And when that money gets spent, it creates a ripple effect. It goes to the local grocery store, the mechanic, the doctor. Economists actually call this the multiplier effect. It basically means that spending one single dollar in the economy creates a net benefit that's actually bigger than that original dollar. Which brings us to part two, more money, more spending. Let's see what happens when we empty that giant wallet. Get this. According to European Central Bank data looking at Chinese households, low-wage earners with kids have a marginal propensity to consume of exactly 1. Okay, in plain English, that literally means they spend 100% of that extra income. 100%! Every single extra penny from a wage hike goes right back into the economy. So where exactly does all that cash go? Well, data from places like China and the Czech Republic shows it flies straight into the essentials. We're talking healthcare, education. In the Chinese data, over 30% of that new income went directly to just health and education alone. And interestingly, the Czech data shows a bit of it goes to what they call addictive goods, which, actually represents a rare little luxury for low-income households who finally have just a tiny bit of breathing room. Moving on to part three, the economic baby bump. Let's connect financial security to fertility. Okay, so demographics are shifting globally, right? Now, the common idea is that professional women often postpone having kids because of time constraints and career trade-offs. But there is a whole other side to this story. Low-income families often delay having kids simply because they need baseline financial stability first. It's not about lacking time, they literally lack the economic security to start a family. And the data from Italy perfectly illustrates this. Italy has one of the lowest birth rates in Europe. But when researchers looked at their minimum income program, they found something absolutely staggering. Reducing economic uncertainty for applicants caused a massive 20% jump in the probability of them having a child within 2 years. It's wild. A stable income basically acted as an accidental but super effective pronatalist tool. We see a strikingly similar trend in the Netherlands, too. Hitting a higher income tier is becoming a really strict prerequisite for entering parenthood. Between 2008 and 2022, the impact of income on the probability of having a baby became so much stronger. The data is telling us a very clear story here. For many people, higher wages literally equal the ability to have more babies. All right, part four, rise of the machines and capital substitution. Now we have to look at the employer's side. Data from Thailand shows an incredible contrast in how wage hikes actually hit different industries. Labor-intensive sectors, think agriculture or retail, they definitely feel the pinch. Their costs rise anywhere from 0.12% to almost 8%. But for tech-intensive sectors like auto manufacturing, petroleum, or steel, the dynamic changes completely. Because they rely so heavily on machinery, human labor is just a tiny fraction of the final product. So a wage hike barely even registers. It pushes costs up by just a tiny fraction of a percent. So what happens? When human labor gets more expensive, businesses naturally substitute labor with capital. Basically, they buy robots, they automate routine tasks. And the massive productivity gains from those machines completely offset the higher wages. A perfect example of this happened in China. Between 2000 and 2009, manufacturing wages there grew by a mind-blowing 200%. 200%! But because of automation, that massive wage hike only led to a tiny 1.9% increase in consumer prices. And if we zoom out to the broader global reality using OECD data, we see that labor productivity has totally decoupled from median wages. What does that mean? Well, over the last couple of decades, the sheer value that workers and their automated tools produce has skyrocketed, but the actual wages paid out have stayed relatively flat. The wealth generated by all this automation is just huge, but it hasn't exactly trickled down to the minimum wage worker.
Which brings us to our final section, Part 5, the cost of living verdict. Should wages rise?
Now, we have to stay totally neutral here and look at the actual trade-offs, right? Because economics is almost never one-sided. The Institute of Labor Economics points to what they call the 3 for 10 rule. Historically, a 10% increase in labor costs leads to a 3% decrease in employment, or a cut in hours worked. So yeah, while many workers get a great raise and go out and spend it, a smaller percentage might unfortunately see their hours cut as employers try to balance the books.
But that widespread fear that a minimum wage hike will trigger some runaway, massive inflation, that seems to be largely a myth. Simulations by the Bank of Canada found that scheduled minimum wage increases would only add a minuscule 0.1 percentage point to overall consumer price inflation. Literally just 0.1. The vast majority of inflation comes from entirely different factors. And that brings us to a really interesting point from a recent OECD policy brief. They explicitly argue that right now, right in the middle of a global cost of living crisis, there is actually room for several countries to increase their wage floors. The data strongly suggests governments can protect vulnerable workers from inflation without crashing the broader economy or causing a massive spike in prices.
So let's tie this whole blueprint together. Extra money in the hands of low-wage workers gets spent almost immediately, which simulates the economy. It provides that crucial baseline stability needed to start and grow families. And on the production side, the extra costs are largely absorbed by robot-driven productivity and automation. So I'll leave you with this final thought to ponder. Given all this, should governments just automatically raise the minimum wage in line with the cost of living? Or is the future of human labor changing so incredibly fast that automation is going to require an entirely new economic rulebook altogether? Think about it. Thanks for hanging out with me for this explainer, and remember to always keep questioning the data.